welcome to this special broadcast. My name is Vineet Malhotra. Speaking about the United States of America in June 2020, a renowned journalist, George Packer, wrote that the coronavirus did not break America. It revealed what was already broken. This comment is absolutely true. They voted with their feet, leaving our cities for their homes, from which they have been forced because of the ongoing crisis in agriculture and rural areas is the situation of our country as well. The second wave in 2021 revealed how inadequate India's health infrastructure is and how unprepared we are. Looking ahead, we need to see how we can learn from the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic and build a new future based on principles of justice and equity as well. With this objective in mind, ActionAid Association and NewsX present Towards New Futures, a show where we discuss with policymakers, social activists, and grassroots workers on how we can create a post-COVID reset which provides hope in these very, very tumultuous times. The series would have 4 episodes dealing with issues concerning agriculture and the rural poor, the world of work, protecting children and childhood, and how to ensure that health and wellness is a human right which is enjoyed by one and all. Today, we're going to talk about land rights and cooperatives reviving rural economies. In these episodes, and in today's episode specifically, we're going to be looking at issues of land rights, rights of communities who depended on ecological resources, the tribals and other forest-dwelling communities, the pastoralists and fishing communities, and the importance of collective enterprise. And let me welcome our guests now. Let me take this opportunity to introduce all the dignitaries and the esteemed panelists who are going to be talking about this very important concept. Mr. Krishna Tirath, former cabinet minister, Ministry of Women and Child Development, is here with us. Jatendra Tota Singh, former agriculture minister, Punjab government, is also going to be joining us. Pradeep Chatterjee, convener, National Platform for Small Scale Fish Workers. We also have P.V. Rajgopal, president, Ekta Parishad. Bratindi Jena, Associate Director, ActionAid Association, is also joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here and taking out the time. Sandeep Chachra, Executive Director of ActionAid. We will be, in fact, talking more about what all Sandeep does in just a few minutes. Tanveer Kazi, ActionAid Expert, and Sharad Kumari, ActionAid Expert. Usha Kumari, Nav Bihar Samaj Kalyan Paristhan Kendra, is also going to be joining us. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this wonderful dialogue, if I can call it. And today we talk about, a resolution to the land question that has been eluding India for a very long time. And I'm going to take the first question to Mr. Raj Gopalji. Sir, if you can hear me. Okay, sir, please unmute yourself.
I can hear you.
All right, sir, you are the leader of the Ekta Parishad, which describes itself as the largest non-violent movement of landless and homeless people. Why do you think that the issue of land rights is crucial in India's rural areas? Please elucidate me as well as our viewers.
So, Vineet, as a non-violent movement, we address violence of all kinds. So we feel landlessness, poverty, are all basically structural violence. So you can't just address physical violence, but also should address structural violence. So a non-violent, peaceful society cannot be built on an unjust system. So for us, non-violence is not just a technique, but an idea for people to live and breathe. So we call it a culture of non-violence. So we believe all natural resources should be available to everyone on earth. These are not produced by any government or any private company. These are all God's creation, and God's creation should be available to all children of God on an equal basis. So resources like water, forest, land, minerals should be available to everyone to work on and make a living. Like Gandhi said, any planning, any development should basically begin with last person. Antyodaya to Sarvodaya, that is a concept. So the landless are the last one on the ladder. So actually, they are the one working on the land, but they have no land. Actually, my position is also, Vinny, that no family should have multiple sources of income. See why people with highly paid jobs and employment hold land in the villages. Why all those making big salaries in foreign countries hold land back at home in the villages? Why business tycoons hold land? So while the poor people, landless people are migrating to cities and slums, people are holding on to land for no reason. So I think land reform is a very, very important agenda if you really want to address rural problems. Thank you.
Right, and absolutely. Tanveer, we've heard from Rajgopalji. According to you, why do you feel that the land rights issue is so important, and what needs to be done in order for its redressal to be complete and expedited?
Thank you, Vineet, for raising such an important issue today. See, land right is not a single right. Generally, we consider it as ownership right. Land right in itself is a bundle of rights. You cannot think on gender justice without land right. A woman, when get land right in her possession, she got some say in household chores or in society. Without land, she falls in so many vulnerabilities. So for gender justice, land is a key. Without that, we cannot imagine any gender justice. Baba Sahib Ambedkar told us that land is not a commodity purpose. It's a land is dignity for us. Almost 77% of scheduled caste or Dalits are landless or near to landless in our country. So they are completely away from their basic household kind of land. They are somewhere in agricultural labor. Many times they are in a bonded labor. We cannot think on social justice without land. Land is a key factor for social justice. We cannot save world without forest, and we cannot save forest without our tribal forests. Tribal should have secure land tenure to their forest, their secure access to the forest. Gandhi Bapu said that our country consists of 7 lakh villages. Generally, we just leave villages there, but without commons, we cannot consider village. Now, this rapid and unplanned urbanization has destroyed those commons. We should have that secure access to commons from those village folks. Without land, we cannot secure our country. There is a deep historical presence of land right demand in our freedom struggle. During 1930s, 40s, our leaders able to convince our masses that freedom is nothing but somewhere secure access to land. And hence our 5-year plans, series of long 12 5-year plans have very significant part of land reform expecting those nation development building strategies. So land is a very key in our nation building historically.
Right. Rajagopalji, Ekta Parishad has been active for more than 3 decades. Illuminate us about the major achievements that have been made in the last 2 or 3 decades.
Thank you, Vinay. There are many to count. So to begin with some, so to bring the agenda back on the table itself was a very, very important thing, that land reform is an unfinished agenda, right? So that was one big achievement. Second one was we helped hundreds of small organizations to come under a large banner to demand land reforms and act for land reforms. So, and we didn't limit ourselves to land. We broadened this to say Jal, Jungle, Jameen, land, forest, and water, minerals included. This is basically the grassroots leadership, preparing grassroots leadership to take this issue and force the state to think about it, act upon it. See, in fact, the 99-2000 Yatra, long march I organized from the border of Rajasthan to the border of Orissa, finally led to a task force, land reforms task force formation in Madhya Pradesh, and many people got land. And every long march that we organized in different states always ended with some small achievement. It cannot be big, but then small achievements. Sure. So moment like, see, I want to refer to 1 or 2 moments like Joto Jito was one moment that we organized, that people should plow and win. Don't wait for the government to come and give land. Take the land, plow it. And thousands of them who did that at that point of time got their land when Forest Rights Act was enacted. because only people who did this before 2005 could get land. And we also organized a thing called Ghar Wapasi. This is basically to counter the other kind of Ghar Wapasi. We said, okay, we will go back to our village. If you have displaced us, we are going back to our village. Otherwise, you give us land somewhere else. See, one or two other things I wanted to mention is 2006, 2007 March. We organized long march from Gwalior to Delhi in 2006, and again in 2007. And this had an impact on Forest Rights Act that came in 2006, and rules were formed in 2006. The larger action in 2012, when 1 lakh people marched from Gwalior, Government of India moved to Agra to make an agreement. We had a 10-point agreement, and it also resulted into law, land acquisition and Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Resettlement Act, and it also led to a formation of a National Land Reforms Council. So it is very satisfying to look back and say, look, so many people got land. It is not only that they got land, people who have got land, they have transformed their life, and now they are supporting the movement. So this can really go a long way. With a piece of land, people can really transform their life. So I have seen this during the last 3 decades, how people fight for land, get land, and transform their life. Yeah, these are the achievements. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tanveer, now another important question for you. Tell us, please share with us and our audience, what has ActionAid done on this particular issue?
It has been engaged in this India from last 50 years. This year we are finishing our 50th year. And ActionAid is a civil society, is a movement working against poverty and injustice. From last 2 decades, in a very focused manner, we are working around land. We are aligning, we are working with excluded communities. Generally, those are discriminated community, and many times they are below poverty line and poor folks. There are 3 layers of our intervention. One is securing access to land and properties. Then the second step is from then securing and development those land resources. And third is building dignity and justice framework around it. This land is generally a very revenue and a legal kind of business. So information lacking is a base of the vulnerability. So we provide those information among those communities. We develop the strength of the community to get that particular information which is needed to get secure access of the land. Then there are community-based organizations, civil society working with those vulnerable communities. We develop some kind of a training modules. We train them for land rights. Sure. Then land literacy is a basic thing. Generating land literacy among vulnerable community is really a challenging job, but we have been doing from last 2 decades. Then paralegal kind of volunteership we have developed in all over India, in different parts of India. See, this different legislation around lands required procedural kind of a deep engagement. Take example, Forest Rights Act. It's required a procedural from village level, forest committee to the district level processes. So we work very closely with the community on procedural experts. Just 5 years back, we submitted around 11 lakh petitions on the name of vulnerable community women to get that access, secure access to the land. We also frequently do research and studies to find in the gaps of the land reform agenda and where's the requirement for policy intervention. We work very closely with Rajagopalji and other civil society movement.
Right. Okay, before we move on to our next question, next segment, I beg your pardon, I'm going to ask Rajagopalji for a final question in this segment. Mr. Rajagopalji, in your opinion, what would be the wider impact of land reforms for rural economies? How can they grow and prosper because of these land reforms? If you can just be brief about it, sir.
See, I have, it's a very interesting question, and then one should deal with it, yeah. So one wider impact will be, see, SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal of United Nations, cannot be achieved without addressing this issue of land reforms. Because if you look at this SDG, it says an end to poverty, an end to inequality, an end to climate crisis, an end to violence. How do you expect something like that to happen if there is no, people have no control over natural resources and there is nothing to depend on. So I think the main issue will be people having control over livelihood resources, people having control over decision making. That's the only way to go about. The second argument is that the study is Taiwan, Korea, Japan, that in countries where there was microeconomic reforms, the macroeconomic reforms succeeded. But in countries like India, where the microeconomic reform was never addressed, you can see what is happening to the macroeconomic reforms. It will collapse like cards. So I don't see any macroeconomic reform will stand without providing justice and resources to the poor people. I have two more small arguments. One is that if the rural economy is strong, what will happen? The distress migration and mass migration will come to an end. And this will reduce pressure on cities. Like, this is basically a win-win situation, that healthy villages and healthy cities. Now both are in difficulty, both are ugly. The village, we have destroyed the villages and we have made the cities very, very ugly. And finally, we as Indians, when we visit different countries in international forums, we are always challenged around the issue of poverty, human rights, discrimination, pollution, bonded labor system.
Right.
So if we want to be proud Indians, we need to behave differently. We need to get our act together and give justice to the poor people. That's the only way forward.
We're going to move on to our second segment now. Well, sizable populations are dependent on ecological resources, be it forests, pasture lands, or even water bodies like rivers, lakes, and ponds. There are an estimated 250 million people living in and around forests. Of them, 100 million are tribals. There are 34 million pastoralists who keep cattle, goats, and sheep. There are some 9 million fisher folk, and this includes both marine and inland fisher folk as well. These are the people caught between the debate of development and environmental conservation. They are displaced and their rights are denied due to setting up of the national parks, and they are also displaced due to large development projects. We have Pradeep Chatterjee of the National Platform for Small-Scale Fish Workers and Bratindi Jena of Action Aid Association to speak on this issue. Mr. Chatterjee, I hope you can hear me, sir. The first question for you is, sir, that share your thoughts on why fisher folk communities should be made custodians of water bodies.
Thank you for giving me a chance to dwell on this important subject. Actually, we are fighting for this custodianship. So the small-scale fishers and fish farmers are by far the largest primary non-consumptive stakeholders of our water. You see that they are the primary stakeholders, we all know. They are the largest in number. And also, that they are non-consumptive. Non-consumptive is very important. Fishers do not waste water. They do not consume water or do not actually pollute water. So that is very, very important actually on observation. And we all know that good fish needs good water. Since good fish needs good water, so the fishers always and everywhere, they try to keep the water good. So that is why it is that makes them the first claimant for the custodianship of this our water rights. And you know that at the small-scale fisheries, small-scale fisheries, actually we define small-scale fishery. It has to be defined before we go to their custodianship characteristics of the custodianship. The small-scale fisheries are fisheries where fishers and allied workers are directly engaged in work, mainly for subsistence as against for commercial purpose, exploiting others' labor. And it has very important characteristics. Small-scale fisheries actually is more traditional. It means that small-scale fisheries have grown through ages. The age-old process of coping with the characteristics of natural fish resources in specific ecology and environment has bestowed it with particular knowledge of the ways and means of catching fish and dealing with ecological sustainability and environmental concerns. like that small scale fisheries actually use gears which are very benign and passive in nature. Small scale fishers are actually, they are less powered. Boats are small and less powered, and they are developed in conformity with the nature of the waters and fish species. So it is a very important attribute of this small scale fisheries, and small scale fisheries is more sustainable. To be sustainable, actually natural resource utilization has to match its regeneration. Slow in extraction and non-aggressive in nature, small scale fisheries is most suitable for this principle. And also, small scale fisheries is more equitable. Small scale fisheries, through its large number of small ownerships, and large partnerships, distribute the wealth earned through fishing in a scale incomparably larger to mechanized or large scale fishing. So that is very important. These are very important characteristics, and that is why the small scale fishers actually are the first claimants to be the custodians of our water sources, water bodies.
Right, absolutely. So we'll talk more about this. We'll take more perspective from you on this important subject. But Pratindhi Jena, according to you, what are the challenges that the tribals and other forest dwellers have been facing in the recent past, and for that matter, for the past few decades?
Yeah, thank you, Vineet. If we see tribal people, forest dwellers, and pastoralists have a symbiotic relation with nature. For generations, they have actually lived while nurturing nature and played a vital role in maintaining ecological balance. They are the communities who lived within this biodiversity-rich mountain, forest regions, and miles away from this so-called developed society, and have a sustained way of life. Round the year, in different seasons, they get all forms of food, fuel, fodder, herbal medicines, forest produce, and their cultural identity and religious rituals revolve around nature. But over the years, what has happened is loss of guardianship over forest and all forms of resources, and systemic alienation of the community from their own territory has been the major challenge. Majority of tribal areas, when we see, are rich with mineral resources. And when a mineral resource map and a tribal location map is superimposed, it coincides. And we all know that the way mineral resources are now haunted for, the way they are mined all over, and this kind of unbridled pilage of such resources has led to tribal displacement, and that too even multiple displacement. And as a result, even the forest is degraded and water resources are polluted due to mining and industrial activities.
Sure.
And there is serious loss of even non-timber forest produce, which the tribal community was dependent on. And tribal people, especially the PVTGs, particularly vulnerable tribal groups, they have been living a community life within those forest regions, now facing displacement and relocation, which has disturbed their social life completely. And women and girls face various forms of violence. Lack of education and malnutrition are common among children. Lack of basic amenities like clean water, sanitation, even basic education and health facilities are still lacking in many places. On the other hand, when you see pastoral communities, pastoralists, they as a community move from one place to the other with their herd to different locations depending on the season, and in search of pasture wherever it is available, grassland. And that is also getting encroached for different kind of projects. They are getting alienated from their resources, and many infrastructure development projects, dams, highways, and encroachment of common for real estate business and other purpose has come up. And that is actually limiting their space of mobility and they are not able to manage fodder for their livestock. and many are shifting to other professions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Pradeep ji, you've been trying to bring fisherfolk communities together for a very long time to, sort of give voice to their issues and their impediments. What all have you been able to achieve, and what all needs to be achieved? So you'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
The main problem confronting the small-scale fishers and fish farmers is that they do not have any legal right over water, on the waterways. You look at the seas, at the rivers, at the ponds, tanks, wetlands, you will find that everywhere, actually, they are being confronted with competing interests, and they are getting evicted from all the waterways. So that is the main problem. And on that problem, actually, we are trying to organize the voice, organize the small-scale fishers in the marine and also in the inland sectors, and also try to raise their voice so that the policymakers actually make policies which actually address this problem. Because this problem is actually the main, another problem with our policymakers is this, that they have not calculated, they did not calculate the contribution of these natural resources to our livelihood, to our food security. So that is a great problem for us, because it is not computed that how much value is being created by these natural resources, and also how many livelihoods are actually being supported by these natural resources. And one of the policies is this, that to evict the natural resource dependent people from the natural resources, so that they can actually serve as cheap labor for industries. So that is the main actually drive of our economic policy making and other things. So we have to confront. And in these years actually we have what we have done. Your question was what we have done. You see, what we have done is this, very briefly, if I point out, that we have formed a national platform for small-scale fish workers, which now has affiliation of small-scale fish workers organizations from 18 states.
Right.
Not the whole states are represented, but groups from 18 states are represented. So we have these problems from 18 states. And then we have main policy positions we have drawn up, and then we have intervened on policy matters, policy documents like National Fisheries Policy and other related documents. And also we are in constant interface with the government, both centrally and in the states.
All right. Well, before we move on to our next segment, I'm going to take one last question from Bratindi Jena. Bratindi, what has Action Aid Association done for the rights of the pastoralists and the tribals and other forest-dwelling communities? Request you to be brief. We have a couple of more segments to take care of.
Action Aid is working in 24 states, around 550 tribal districts and 75 blocks and number of villages. Even in the tribal heartland of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, northeastern states. Our work has concentrated around building community capacity, developing leadership, promoting women health, children education, nutrition, and livelihood, and reaching out to the community during any kind of emergency. We have played a major role in implementing pro-tribal and pro-environment policy. There are two progressive legislations. One is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Areas, PESA, 1996, and the other one, the Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dweller Recognition of Forest Rights. That's in short known as FRA 2006. Both these acts provide communities their rights over resources and the power to manage those in favor of community well-being through village council, that's Gram Sabha decision-making process. So these two have been a major area of work, and we have Adivasi Janajati Adhikar Manch, AJAM, a national level platform of particular vulnerable tribal groups, including more than 40 community-based organizations and forums, which includes all tribal communities, PBTGs, and even pastoralists, who are working for taking forward all the program implementation part and policy advocacy part, both at the local and national.
Okay. Now we move on to our third segment. While ownership of land, folks, and custodial control of natural resources can be seen as a foundation to a more nurturing economy, there is also a need to address the issue of precarity of livelihoods, considering the small land holdings and individualized nature of livelihood operations in our rural areas. We have with us Usha ji of the Nav Bihar Samaj Kalyan Paristhan Kendra and Sharat Kumari of Action Aid Association to speak with us about their experience of creating a women-led cooperative of farmers in Nalanda, Bihar. Usha ji, अगर आप मुझे सुन पा रही हैं, नमस्कार. Can you hear me, Usha ji? Please unmute yourself.
सर नमस्कार सभी टीम को.
जी, सबसे पहले मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहूंगा कि आप लोगों को एक सामूहिक किसानी ये मुहिम शुरू करने का ख्याल, ये मोटिवेशन कहाँ से आई?
जी सर, थैंक यू इसके लिए. सर प्रथम सर हम लोग नव बिहार संस्था जो पावापुरी नालंदा में और एक्शन एड एसोसिएशन पटना रीजन से जब महिला अधिकार मोर्चा 2008 में जुड़े एक्शन एड से, तो उस समय हमारा महिला अधिकार मोर्चा था. महिला अधिकार मोर्चा के संगठन के माध्यम से क्षेत्र में काम करते करते एक सोच, अधिकार रहित काम करते करते एक सोच उभर कर आया कि हम लोग महिला कोऑपरेटिव का गठन करने की सोच बनी. उस सोच बनाने के जो मतलब सोच बनने का जो बिंदु था वो इस प्रकार से हम आपके सामने बता रहे हैं. तो सर प्रथम तो कि जो कि कृषि का कार्य है जिसमें हमारी महिलाएं का पूर्ण सहयोग होता है, जैसे कि शुरुआत से खेत का तैयारी करना, बीज बोआई, कुड़ाई, निकाई, काटना, संजोना, उसको एकत्रित करके फिर घर में इकट्ठा संग्रह करके उसको पूरा सुखा कूट के रखना. तो मतलब इतना सारा काम करते हुए भी महिलाओं को उस पे कोई मतलब अधिकार है. अब फसल को संजो करके घर में रख दी, लेकिन जब बिक्री करने की बात आई तो बिक्री करके पैसा इकट्ठा करने की बात आई, पैसा खर्च करने की बात आई, या बच्चों की पढ़ाई की बात आई, या घर में और किसी तरह की कार्यों की बात आई, तो वहाँ पे महिलाओं को एक तरह से नगण्य माना जाता है, समाज में माना जाता था, सुनने की ये अथी पे रखा जाता था महिलाओं को. तो ये सारे चीज को देखते हुए हम लोग इसमें ख्याल आया, हमारे एक्शन एड और नव बिहार संस्था के साथ जुड़कर सोच बनी कि हम लोग एक महिलाओं का कोऑपरेटिव बनाने की सोच आई, जिसमें एक्शन एड और
जी
महिलाओं को आर्थिक और सामाजिक स्तर पर महिलाओं को सशक्तिकरण की दिशा में अग्रसर करने की सोच बढ़ी. इसके अंतर्गत महिलाओं जो घर में जो कार्य कर रही थी, महिलाएं घर के काम करते हुए अपने घर की और खेत के काम करने के साथ साथ महिलाएं संगठित होकर के समूह बना करके क्षेत्र में हम लोग महिलाओं का सामूहिक खेती का समूह बनाया, जिसका नाम था महिला नव बिहार महिला किसान समूह के रूप में एक गठन किया गया हमारे 60 गांव में. सबसे पहले हम लोग गिरियग और नालंदा जिला के गिरियग और सिलाव प्रखंड में के 60 गांव में हम लोग महिला किसान समूह का गठन किए और उसके माध्यम से वो लोग अपना सामूहिक सब्जी की खेती का शुरुआत की.
जी बिल्कुल. मैं शरद कुमारी जी से भी एक सवाल लेना चाहूंगा. शरद कुमारी जी, अगर आप मुझे सुन पा रही हैं, अपने आप को अनम्यूट कीजिए प्लीज.
जी
आप, हाँ, ये बताइए कि सामूहिक खेती को जमीन पर साकार करने का काम आपने कैसे किया, क्या फॉर्मूला आपने अप्लाई किया?
सभी लोगों को नमस्कार। सबसे पहले जब हमने काम की शुरुआत की थी तो हम महिलाओं के बीच, तो हमारा उद्देश्य था जो लैंगिक भेदभाव, जो लैंगिक हिंसा महिलाएं झेल रही थी, उस मुद्दे पर महिलाओं को संगठित करना। और इसे लेके जब हमने काम को आगे बढ़ाया और हमारी महिलाएं जब संगठित होने लगी, इन मुद्दों को समझने लगी, और जब हम किसी मुद्दे को जड़ से हटाना चाहते हैं तो उसके मुख्य बिंदु में जाना चाहते हैं कि आखिर कौन कौन से कारण हैं जो हम इस तरह का भेदभाव झेल रहे हैं या इस तरह की हिंसा झेल रहे हैं। उसमें एक बड़ी बात निकल के आई कि महिलाएं स्वावलंबी नहीं है। और स्वावलंबन की जब बात आती है तो उसमें मुख्य रूप से आर्थिक स्वावलंबन की बात आती है। महिलाओं के साथ जो लैंगिक भेदभाव है, जो लैंगिक हिंसा है, उसके जड़ में आर्थिक जो उनका स्वावलंबन है वो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण बिंदु के रूप में उभर के आया साथियों के बीच में। और हमने मुख्य रूप से इस सिद्धांत पर काम किया कि स्वाभिमान, स्वावलंबन और स्वशासन, ये तीन चीजें जब तक एक व्यक्ति, एक इंसान के अंदर के साथ नहीं होंगी तो वो कभी भी सशक्त नहीं हो सकता है। और जब मैं काम कर रही थी अपनी महिला समूहों के साथ, जो महिला अधिकार मोर्चा की चर्चा की हमारी उषा जी ने, तो हमने जब देखा कि ये एकजुट होने लगे लैंगिक हिंसा को लेके, लैंगिक भेदभाव को लेके, इनके अंदर जो आत्मविश्वास दिखा, उसको देखते हुए हमें लगा कि अगर हम आर्थिक दिशा की तरफ कदम बढ़ाएं तो ये हमें सफलता मिलेगी। और तब हमने समूह के रूप में, चूंकि नालंदा जिला सब्जी की खेती के लिए बहुत ज्यादा प्रसिद्ध है हमारे बिहार में, और सब्जी की खेती में यह मेहनत वहां भी बहुत लगता है, लेकिन कम समय में हम जल्दी फसल ले सकते हैं। और लगातार महिलाएं ऑलरेडी उसके सारे कामों में लगी रही, लेकिन कभी वो स्वावलंबी नहीं हो पाई। जैसा कि उषा जी ने भी आपसे बांटा कि वो सारा कुछ करती थी, लेकिन वो पैसे उनके हाथ में नहीं थे या उनसे संबंधित कोई निर्णय उनके हाथ में नहीं थे। तो जब महिलाओं में एकजुटता बनी तो हमें लगा कि एक सामूहिक खेती, जो एक परिकल्पना हमने किताबों में पढ़ी थी, हमने देखा था, हमें लगा कि अगर सामूहिक रूप से उतरा जाए, और जब भी वंचित समुदाय कुछ काम करने निकलता है, हमारे पास बड़ी पूंजी नहीं होती है, हमारे पास थोड़ा ज्ञान का अभाव रहता है, तो हम अगर सामूहिक रूप से जुटेंगे तो शायद बेहतर कर पाएंगे। तो ये एक जो सोच बनी, तो सामूहिक खेती को हमने सामने लाया, महिलाओं के समूह बने। और एक्शन एड की जो सबसे बड़ी विशेषता है कि एक्शन एड की पॉलिसी जो एक है, अस्थायी विकास की तरफ जो ये काम करती है, जिस भी क्षेत्र में काम करती है, कोशिश होती है कि हम अस्थायी विकास को बढ़ावा दें। और उस कारण से हम लोगों को बहुत मदद मिली, आर्थिक रूप से भी हमें सहायता मिली कि हम महिलाओं का समूह बना सके। फिर हमने लगातार जो भूस्वामी थे, जो बटाई पर देने वाले जमीन मालिक थे, उन सब लोगों के साथ लगातार बातचीत करके इस सामूहिक खेती के सपने को साकार किया और आगे बढ़ाया।
जी उषा जी, आपने अपना कोऑपरेटिव भी रजिस्टर किया, उसके पीछे क्या कथा है, क्या कहानी है, हमारे दर्शकों को बताइए।
जी सर, थैंक यू। सामूहिक खेती करते हुए, जैसा कि हमारे सर दीदी बताए, तो उसी के संदर्भ में हम लोग का जो सोच बना, नव बिहार संस्था और महिला अधिकार मोर्चा और एक्शन एड के तीनों का संयुक्त प्रयास से जो कोऑपरेटिव का रजिस्ट्रेशन की जो कहानी है वो बहुत ही मतलब अच्छा है, और काफी संघर्ष करना पड़ा। खास करके इसमें मेरा जिस तरीके से नव बिहार और एक्शन एड का मार्गदर्शन मिलते गया, और खुद ब खुद इसमें ज्यादा से ज्यादा 90% मतलब हम इसमें खुद, क्योंकि जैसे जैसे हमको मार्गदर्शन मिलता गया उस तरीके से हम अपना काम किए। बायलॉज लाने से लेकर के रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाने तक हम अपने अन्य साथियों का भी सहयोग के साथ हम रजिस्ट्रेशन की ओर बढ़ने का प्रयास किए। तो बहुत सारी बाधाएं भी उस समय आई। रजिस्ट्रेशन ऑफिस में, वहाँ क्या कहता है, सहकारिता ऑफिस में हमें बहुत तरह की बाधाएं वहां पर आई, जैसे कि वहाँ के क्लर्क, किरानी, जब भी हम गए तो वो लोग हमको हतोत्साह करने की प्रयास किए कि आप महिला हैं, आपसे रजिस्ट्रेशन आप कोऑपरेटिव चला लीजिएगा, सारा चीज लिखना पढ़ना, सब जगह कांटेक्ट करना, सब कुछ करना आपसे हो पाएगा, इस तरह की निकल के आई। लेकिन हमारा भी मन में हौसला था, हमको अपने कोऑपरेटिव का टीम का और हमारे छत्र छाया देने वाले नव बिहार और एक्शन एड का हमारे साथ थे, तो हम भी हौसला बुलंद करके उनको दिखा दिए कि हम भी कोऑपरेटिव चला सकते हैं और रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाने में हम पूरा ये कर किए। उसके बाद जब हमारे यहाँ डीसीओ सर 2 बार क्षेत्र भ्रमण किए, विजिट किए, और उसके पश्चात तो उन्होंने फिर आश्वासन दिया कि हाँ आपका क्षेत्र है सही, आपका कोऑपरेटिव रजिस्टर्ड करने लायक है, आपके लोग सब एक्टिव है। तो इसके माध्यम से फिर हम लोग सब किसान से बातचीत करने के बाद रजिस्ट्रेशन की प्रक्रिया पूरा हुआ, और उसमें जो सोच हम लोग का था कि कोऑपरेटिव रजिस्ट्रेशन करवा करके और डायरेक्ट सरकारी गैर सरकारी संस्था से जो हमको सहयोग मिले और उनसे जुड़ के काम करने की सोच बढ़ी हम लोग को कोऑपरेटिव रजिस्ट्रेशन की।
जी,
तो इसमें पहले तो जो हमारा था नालंदा जिला के 2 प्रखंड गिरियक और सिलाव में ही हम लोग कार्यरत थे, लेकिन रजिस्ट्रेशन हम लोग के पहले हम लोग पूरे नालंदा जिला के स्तर पर रजिस्ट्रेशन करवाए, जिसमें अभी आज के तारीख में नालंदा जिला का कुल सब डिवीजन 3 है, अनुमंडल 3 अनुमंडल है, राजगीर, बिहार शरीफ और हिलसा। तो तीनों अनुमंडल के 20 प्रखंड हैं वहाँ नालंदा में, तो 12 प्रखंड के लोग और 76 गांव के लोग हमारे कोऑपरेटिव की सदस्य हैं।
ओके, शरद कुमारी जी, आगे की रणनीति क्या होने वाली है? शरद कुमारी जी, हाँ जी, उषा जी बताइए, संक्षेप में बताइए, वक्त की कमी है हमारे पास।
जी सर, हमारे संस्था, हमारे कोऑपरेटिव का नाम है नव बिहार बहुउद्देशीय महिला विकास स्वावलंबी सहकारी समिति, जिसका रजिस्ट्रेशन 16 जुलाई 2018 में हुआ।
जी, बहुत बधाई हो उसको।
बोर्ड डायरेक्टर 13 मेंबर है उसमें, और हमारा खाता सितंबर 2020 में सेंट्रल कोऑपरेटिव बैंक नालंदा बिहार शरीफ में खाता हमने खुलवाए हैं।
जी बिल्कुल, हमारे पास वक्त की कमी है उषा जी, मैं आखिरी सवाल लेना चाहूंगा इस सेगमेंट में शरद कुमारी जी से। शरद कुमारी जी, हमें संक्षेप में बताइए कि आगे की रणनीति क्या होने वाली है, सामूहिक खेती की सफलता के बारे में भी संक्षेप में जिक्र कीजिए, और ये बताइए कि आगे की रणनीति क्या होने वाली है एक्शन एड की।
आगे की रणनीति का जहां तक सवाल है, निश्चित रूप से हम चाहेंगे कि जो भी एक जिला से हम अन्य जिलाओं, बिहार के अन्य जिले तक हम जा सकें। चूंकि हमारा बिहार झारखंड साथ में है, तो हम झारखंड में भी इसके लिए प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि वहाँ किस तरीके से इन चीजों को हम बढ़ावा दे सकें। दूसरी जो एक बड़ी चीज है कि अभी जो सामान्य खेती हो रही है, हम इसको चाह रहे हैं कि ये 100% जैविक खेती के रूप में कैसे बदल सके, क्योंकि अभी जो समय है, जो पर्यावरण की मांग है, हमें जैविक खेती को बढ़ावा देने की बहुत जरूरत है। तो एक हमारी सोच है कि एक तो इसका हम राज्य स्तर पर ले जाएं पूरे सामूहिक खेती के मामले को महिलाओं के बीच, फिर इसको हम जैविक खेती के रूप में कैसे ले जाएं, और खेती के बाद फूड प्रोसेसिंग की तरफ भी हम बढ़ना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि निश्चित रूप से महिलाओं के आर्थिक स्वावलंबन में, खासकर ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में आर्थिक स्वावलंबन में बहुत ही उसका योगदान होगा। और जो एक बड़ा सपना कह सकते हैं या एक बड़ी रणनीति कह सकते हैं कि एक यह भी सपना हम देख रहे हैं कि हमारे काम से प्रभावित होके हम सरकार की नीति को कैसे प्रभावित कर सकते हैं। उसमें जो एक बड़ी बात है, खासकर बिहार के मामले में जो सब्जियों की खेती है, हरी सब्जी के लिए कोई कोल्ड स्टोरेज आज तक नहीं है, और वो एक बहुत बड़ी बाधा है बिहार के सभी किसानों के लिए, चाहे वह महिला किसान हो या अन्य किसान हो। तो क्या सरकार इसके लिए रणनीति बना सकती है, या छोटे छोटे स्तर पर जो एक कहते हैं कि जीरो एनर्जी कूल चैम्बर, उसके लिए कुछ योजनाएं बना सकती हैं, या बड़े
जी।
कोल्ड स्टोरेज बना सकती है, इसके लिए हम सरकार को कैसे
जी
प्रभावित
शरद कुमारी जी, वक्त की कमी है, मैं माफी चाहूंगा, हमें आगे बढ़ना होगा. We'll move on now, folks, and we are going to talk about the ownership of land, custodial control of natural resources, collective farming, and possible different forms of cooperative enterprise. And what are the wider implications of these foundational blocks? We have with us Sandeep Chachra of Action Aid, Executive Director of Action Aid. He's also the managing editor of a global journal called Agrarian South Journal of Political Economy. Sandeep, appreciate you speaking with us, and you've been very patient hearing out everybody. Now it's your turn to shed some light and give us the important perspective that all of us and our viewers have also been waiting for. Why does Action Aid Association focus on these specific blocks in its interventions in rural areas? That is a very pertinent question at this point in time. Please elaborate and elucidate.
Thank you. Thank you, Vineet, for having me here. Greetings to all viewers of NewsX and all the co-panelists. The esteemed co-panelists are people I've learned from, so extremely honored to have them with us today here. I want to tell you very briefly that land in philosophy is an eternal quest. Rajagopalji started there. It's an eternal quest of emotion, of a space in the physical world, of dignity, and it's an unresolved eternal quest. Similarly, land in history is also an unresolved issue. If you take it, whether it's our own land, our own country here, or whether it's any other country, with the exception of a few, will not get into those details today. Essentially, land is an unresolved question. So you have on the one hand a small minority which has ample land, and we have majorities who are landless and therefore castigated into forms of bondage, informal work, insecurity that have been talked about. And I am talking land in a wider context, not just of agriculture, but as Mr. Pradeep Chatterjee raised, the question of fisheries, the question of forests, in a wider context, the question of water bodies, pasture lands, and so on and so forth. So I'm taking land in that wider context. If you take India alone, 56%, as per the 2011 census, we'll have the new census now, things won't change much, but 56% of the rural households who were connected to agriculture did not have land. If you take that NSO sample survey of 2013, 7% of Indians had more than 46% of the land holdings. So it talks of the inequalities and the unfinished agendas of democratization of land. And herein lies the question which has been raised here, the issue of caste, the issue of class, and the issue of gender and patriarchy. So you would find people of the lower caste, Dalits, and also of intermediate caste. You would find ethnic communities. You would find Muslims in our country, those who are connected to agriculture. You would find women who are landless. So there's this historically unresolved question. And now to say that all of these people, today the number is 50 crores. 50 crore of our people are informal workers, but that's a subject for another conversation another time. But 50 crore informal workers today are castigated to a life of insecurity without secure jobs, the wages hovering around the minimum with hardly any social protection. And I may say undignified existence and precarities. So to say that they would be disconnected from land and have economic progress and futures outside of agriculture is a difficult proposition. It needs balance. I appreciate the steps taken in the past by various governments, and including this one, the current one, on the question of skill building and reviving non-farm sector of the economy. But there will need to be a balance in that solution. I want to sort of say that. Otherwise, we would be called prisoners of history. And let me put it, the only prisoners of history, and we don't want to be called that, right? Because the only prisoners of history are what is called fossils. And the other prisoners of history that I remember are mummies in the Egyptian context, or sculptures. So certainly we don't want to be called prisoners of history in that context, but rather in our land actually craft new futures towards ecological and social justice for a just and equal world for all. So that's where I want to come to. Now, historically, Vineet, if there is time, I want to say that
sure,
the transition from agrarian to non-agrarian economies have been tried very well in history in the northern countries, particularly 2 centuries ago when Europe brought down population dependent on farming from 56, 60%, 70% to 3 or 4% as it stands today. But that was done under very, very different circumstances of colonization, circumstances of export of populations to settler colonies, such as Australia, such as America, such as the Latin America, such as South Africa. Also, we note at that point in time, we must say that industrialization was labor-intensive industrialization. Now, those things are not being repeated now, and some of those things should not be repeated. We don't want another colonization. So what do we do to our people is a moot question which Rajagopalji was raising and you were raising in the earlier conversation. Now, finally, also to say in this regard, a couple of solutions. To say that no land is available is a myth. If you look at the land ceiling laws of India, the current data that I have tells me that only 70% of the ceiling, 71% of the ceiling surplus land has been redistributed. So we still have 29% to redistribute. Now, this is in a context when there's calls for revision of the land ceilings itself, because as you know, irrigation over the past few decades have led to different productivities of land. So therefore, there is a need to revise even what is called ceiling holdings into operational holdings, the maximum operational holdings, which includes also what is called land which is leased out. So instead of ceilings, ownership ceilings, we need to have operational ceilings. We need to have minimum land ownership acts for communities which have never held land, the Dalits, the Adivasis, the denotified tribes. Many of those are the nomadics that were being talked of. Many of them, under the various circumstances that have changed, have adopted sedentary lives. And when you adopt sedentary lives, you need to have a guarantee of some kind of a dignity, of some kind of a home, of some kind of an agricultural future, because you don't have anything else to go by. So the unfinished agenda of land also includes, and this is what the Committee of Agrarian Reforms in 2010 also shared, that we need to settle these issues. Look at Bhudan lands. It's a very indeterminate status. Speakers from Bihar are here in your show, and they could very well tell you that Bhudan land, which has been donated, it's a Bhudan, right? Land gift. Now, that land has also not been completely redistributed amongst landless communities. We also need to look at what is called special exemptions given to landholding, trusts, religious charities, educational institutions, public sector. They sit over huge quantities of land which could very well be used in a sustainable farming way, which was being alluded to earlier in your show. So in some ways, just to say that land is not available is a myth. If I were to look at the government wastelands themselves, a lot of these wastelands have now been privatized to private profit. They could very well be developed and redeveloped and given out to communities which don't have land. So just to say in short that various solutions are available to the land question. The landless people of India, the owners of India, the tenants of India are surely looking to a future where they can have a plot of their own, a field of their own. The women are looking for a field of their own. Right, Sandeep. The dignity. Thank you, Vineet.
Absolutely. We are also pleased to have former Cabinet Minister, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Krishna Tirath with us. Krishna ji, namaskar. हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. If you can hear me, ma'am, please unmute yourself. You're muted, ma'am, right now. Ma'am, if you can hear me, अगर आप मेरी आवाज सुन पा रहे हैं.
जी जी.
Ma'am, we are talking about land and we are talking about the scarcity of resources for the underprivileged. उन लोगों के लिए जिनका जमीन और किसान और अपनी फसल से जो नाता है वो सदियों से चला आ रहा है, पर अभी भी जो जमीन है उनकी नहीं है. हालांकि वो इस पर डिपेंड करते हैं, वो इससे अपनी एक तरह से ऊर्जा बढ़ाते हैं, पर फिर भी जो ओनरशिप है वो अभी अच्छी तरीके से डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड नहीं है. आपकी क्या विचारधारा है इस बड़ी समस्या को लेकर, जिस एक्शन एड बहुत बार प्रेवलेंस में और सरकार के सामने लाने की कोशिश की है?
ये बिल्कुल ठीक है कि जो किसान, जो खास तौर से महिला किसान है या किसान है, जिस जगह पे वो पैदा कर रहे हैं वो उनका राइट कभी कभी नहीं है. या ये गवर्नमेंट इस समय पे छीनने की कोशिश में है। पर मैं इस पक्ष में हूँ कि जमीन उनकी अपनी जैसी है वैसी होनी चाहिए और उनको पूरा फ्रीडम, पूरा राइट देना चाहिए जिससे वो उस पर ज्यादा पैदावार कर सके और देश के लिए अच्छी पैदावार करके देश का भरण पोषण कर सके। बल्कि यहाँ भी नहीं, ट्राइबल में भी जड़ जमीन और जल जमीन और खेत या जल जमीन और उनके जो पेड़ है वो उनके होने चाहिए, ट्राइबल में भी होना चाहिए। ये किसानों के लिए भी जरूरी है, उनकी जमीन उनके पास होनी चाहिए, उसका राइट पूरा होना चाहिए, उसमें क्या उगाना है, कितना उगाना है, कब करना है। बल्कि गवर्नमेंट को मदद करनी चाहिए कि उस पर उन्हें लोन तो नहीं बल्कि उनको मदद दी जाए, पैसा दिया जाए जिससे अच्छा बीज, अच्छी खाद, अच्छा वो और देश के लिए अच्छी उपजाऊ उपज पैदा कर सके और देश खुशहाल रह सके।
मैम, आपको क्यों लगता है कि इस बड़ी समस्या को लेकर इतनी सरकारें आई हैं इतिहास में और भूतकाल में, कोई मोमेंटम क्यों नहीं बन पाया?
ये बात ठीक है कि मोमेंटम कोशिश काफी सरकार ने की, बल्कि हमारी सरकार ने भी, जब हम लोग थे, हम महिलाओं के लिए चाहते थे कि उनका पूरा अधिकार उन्हें मिलना चाहिए। उनकी जमीन है, उन पे जमीन में उनको फ्रीडम होना चाहिए, जो जैसा चाहे। लेकिन इस समय मोमेंटम बहुत ज्यादा उभरा है क्योंकि जब प्राइवेटाइज करने की बात आई, इनकी जमीनें छीनने की बात आई, तो ये एकजुट होकर सामने आए हैं और मैं इनके पक्ष में हूं कि इनको मिलना चाहिए। अब जो भी सरकार बैठी है, जो पहले क्या हुआ क्या नहीं हुआ, क्या कारण रहे, अब उसमें ज्यादा लंबे में मैं पढ़ना नहीं चाहती हूँ, लेकिन इस समय उनको पूरा अधिकार उनको मिलना चाहिए और उनकी मदद होनी चाहिए। जो जमीन वो चाहते, जो जितना जो बिल ये आया है, मैं तो चाहती हूँ वापिस हुआ जाए और जिस तरह से किसान कहते हैं 100% उनकी बात मान के किया जाए। इसमें महिलाएं भी हैं, महिलाओं को क्योंकि दोहरी मार पड़ती है, घर के काम भी है, कि खेत का काम भी है और ऊपर से ये जब लड़ाई लड़नी पड़ती है एक युद्ध की तरह, तो उनकी जो हालात है वो बद से बदतर होती चली जा रही है। और हमारे देश में ये हालात हुई, खाने को सबसे पहले खाने के लिए कहते हैं पेट में अन्न हो, हाथ में काम हो, तो पहले जब पेट में अन्न होगा तभी हाथ पैर ये शरीर काम करेगा। अगर वो ही नहीं रहेगा तो हम कहीं के भी नहीं रहेंगे। हमारा देश फिर से वो हो जाएगा कि हम बाहर के देशों पे इंतजार करते, जैसे ऑस्ट्रेलिया के अनाज आता था और उस समय पे हम बहुत छोटे छोटे होते थे, माँ कहती थी इसमें इतना लोच है कि रोटी रबर की तरह बन रही है और बनते बनते अगर नहीं खाई गई ठंडी 1 घंटे के बाद तो वो बिल्कुल खाई नहीं जाती थी। ये हालात देश में पैदा होने वाले हैं और ना हमें अन्न मिलेगा, ना सब्जियां मिलेंगी, ना फल मिलेगा, ना पशु होंगे, ना पक्षियां जीवित रहेंगे, क्योंकि उसी पे पक्षी और पशु भी जीवित रहते हैं। तो इसलिए इस देश को बढ़ाना है तो इस बात को मानना होगा और हमें किसानों की बात को मान के एक रास्ता निकालना होगा, पूरा फ्रीडम उन्हें दिया जाए और जो जैसा वो चाहते हैं अगर एक बार हम करके देख लें। इसमें कोई ईगो नहीं है सरकार का। सरकार वो काम करती है जो पब्लिक के पक्ष में हो। अगर कोई गलत हो भी जाए तो हमें उसमें अमेंडमेंट कर देना चाहिए, अमेंडमेंट करके उनके हिसाब से कानून बनाए जाने चाहिए। मैं इस पक्ष में।
जी मैम, आप हमारे साथ जुड़े और अपना नजरिया शेयर किया, इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। एंड folks, we're going to conclude this particular show. We have covered a lot of ground and we are definitely looking towards newer futures. We were speaking about rural economies and how they can be revived, and I would like to thank all our notable panelists for taking out the time and giving their perspective. And what we are doing here is going to have echoes reverberate in far away into the future. Thank you everyone for being a part of this wonderful endeavor. We're going to dip into a short break. Be right back.
Shukriya.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.